What's the most NSFW experience you witnessed right in front of your eyes? Story 1. Driving on an interstate highway about 75 miles per hour when I see the car in the left lane start to drive a little erratically. As I passed the car on the right, I saw what looked like the male pleasuring the woman driving, who looked like she was having a great time. I quickly got away from them to avoid an accident. Story 2. I was in a train compartment sitting by a window. It was broad daylight. There were two young students, a boy and a girl. Suddenly the girl opened the guy's fly and started to use her hand on him. I did not know how to react, as nothing like that happened to me before. Also, they blocked my way to the corridor. They did not even close the curtains, so the conductor girl passing by saw them too, and apparently did not know how to react as well. Then they got off on the very next stop. I think they did not have a ticket. Story 3. Driving Uber, I caught a dude jerking off in my car. Turned around and he had his thing in one hand and his phone in the other hand recording it. It kind of stunned me at how bold he was. I kicked him out and still charged him for the entire ride. This was one of the reasons I bought a dual-facing dashcam. Story 4. My gym is on the second floor and has big windows facing the parking lot. One day I was standing at the window catching my breath and happened to look down. There, in one of the parked cars, were two of the other members completely naked and going to town. The woman's face wasn't visible, but she had a distinctive tattoo, so I immediately knew who they were. On the plus side, working out was really paying off for them as they both looked quite fit. Story 5. Worked at an aluminum plant. One of the mills was down for a few days. I went to the pulpit to sleep and chill since I didn't have anything to do. Walk in and two of my co-workers, both men, both very much married, banging away. I just turned around and left. The rest of the time I worked with them was awkward for sure. Story 6. I don't know if Giant Eagle is a grocery store you can find across all of the US, but I was doing some grocery shopping on my lunch break and a guy came into the store with a gun, apparently intending to kill one of the cashiers. Later found out it was the guy's ex-GF, and then himself, but he ended up shooting himself in the head. I just happened to be 2 checkout lanes away from him when it happened. Story 7. Paramedic here. We see a lot of crazy stuff as you can imagine, but one that stands out happened a few weeks ago. We got called to an opioid overdose. We got there, walked into a room that had 4 people plus the patient, 5 total. We started to work on the patient as it was obvious he had very minimal respiratory effort left. We started to ventilate the patient to reoxygenate the brain. We do this before administering naloxone, Narcan, as the patient tends to come back to in a much less aggressive manner. Anyway, 2 of the bystanders started arguing about something that we weren't concerned with. The argument continued to escalate until they were both shouting at each other. One of the bystanders that wasn't involved with the argument calmly placed a needle back into his ACF, inside of the elbow, and withdrew a syringe of his blood. He does this a second time with a second needle and casually places them both on the table and watches the other 2 arguing. He begins to say shut up to the others, but they aren't listening. He very calmly and casually picks up both syringes, dual wheels, and squirts his blood into both their faces. The blood went into their eyes, mouth, nose. He very calmly then says, "I told you to shut up and you didn't, so welcome to the world of hepatitis." Absolutely freaking disgusting. Story 8. Catching my 7th grade science teacher having an affair with one of the kindergarten teachers at my school. It was a K-8 school, in the science classes supply room. And boy was his wife not happy to find out. Weirdest and funniest week of detention I ever sat through. Story 9. Work colleague was using the cardboard compactor, the compactor jammed, so the Muppet climbed into the still powered on compactor and started jumping and stamping on the cardboard sticking out. Super not safe for work, and he's lucky he was noticed before anything terrible happened. Story 10. I was in Iraq and the Iraqi National Army was helping us get ISIS out of the country. Well, we captured 7 ISIS members who had just planted IEDs all along the death highway. The commander for the Iraqi National Army told them to get on their knees, and then he told them who's going to die. Someone's going to die, he said. He then executed every one of them right in front of me. I have never seen brutality like that in my entire life. Even in combat, I've never seen something as brutal as that. Haunts me to this day. Story 11. I was at my high school graduation party, which was being hosted by one of my classmates at their house. After a lot of alcohol consumption and throwing up, I went to lie down inside a tent that was fully propped up in their basement for some reason. You know when you're extremely drunk and lying down, and if you make even the tiniest of movements you start getting the spins and feeling nauseous? Well, that was the situation I was in. Anyways, not much later, my friend and his girlfriend at the time came into the tent and crawled over me to get to the empty side. Since I was in this motionless state trying to avoid nausea, they assumed I was asleep. Next thing you know, they're going at it right beside me, no further than a meter away. It went on for a while, and eventually I felt like I had to go to the bathroom, but at that point the only thing I could do was pretend I was asleep and unaware. They've since broken up, but my friend and I still laugh about it. Story 12. When was like 9, me and some ice hockey buds saw a dude split his head wide open on an ice rink, and then some inexperienced skaters trip over him and hurt themselves. Story 13. I used to manage a small family-owned retail store. It was the 4th of July and the owners of course took the day off and dropped the responsibility on me. We had 2 stock boys bringing up some items on the forklift when I heard a banshee scream coming from outside the storefront. One of them comes flying through the front door on one leg spewing profanity before collapsing on the ground. I look down and see his actual ankle. Like the bone. Blood is going everywhere. Dude was riding tandem on the forklift, a giant safety no-no, when the driver took a hard turn and sent the kid off the side, running over his foot. The driver screeched to a halt, though he stopped on the kid's foot, he didn't, so he popped the forklift in reverse and ran over the foot again. Anyway, I learned that day that I keep my cool in emergency situations. Grabbed and elevated the kid's foot, instructed someone to call 911, always tell a specific person to call 911, never say someone call 911, and another person to get towels to try and stop the bleeding. I held his foot up until the EMTs came. They managed to save the kid's foot, but he had a battle ahead of him. His foot went necrotic and he went septic, I think that's the right term, at one point, but he survived. I don't work there anymore. There were a lot of unsafe practices going on and the owners didn't treat their employees very well. I left about 8 years ago and surprise surprise they shut down about a year and a half later. Story 14. The aftermath of a deadly shooting in Montreal's Chinatown. We heard a few pops, a couple screams, turned the corner, and the guy is laying right there on the sidewalk with one in his head. No clue what happened to the shooter. Police arrived 30 seconds later. Story 15. It was the Friday evening of Jazz Fest in New Orleans. I remember it was Friday because I had work and tickets to go on Saturday. I head down the corner bar, which is across town from the fest. Within minutes after I get there, this randy, sunburned couple who come in hooked at the mouth. Just tongue blasting each other's face whole. They peel off long enough to order a drink and head to an open table that's under the dartboard. The 4 guys actively playing were like, "Don't sit there," but they shrugged it off and said anyway. The guys kind of looked at each other and kept throwing darts. My thought was that it would encourage them to move. They didn't. The guy makes a move and starts fingering the woman and the bartender yells at them to take it outside. The woman finally stands up after being asked several times to knock it off. Just as she's standing, one of the guys throws his dart and hits her right in the ear hole. It was sticking out of the side of her head like a prop. She screams this pain-shocked, wild scream and runs outside. The bartender called the paramedics, but the couple was gone by the time they arrived. Wear earplugs at Jazz Fest. Story 16. I was in the old Cairo airport years ago. It was hot as hell and during the time when everyone was flying back from Hajj. You have to understand there are a lot of poor people that never fly and are completely uneducated and they have to do the Hajj once. This group of very, very old women who were probably 70 years old, but looked 100 were waiting in their bags, and it was chaos. Crowded like crazy. And this old lady squats down and takes a massive watery poo right on the floor, her galabia provides modesty. And after she did it, another lady did the same. The smell combined with the heat and the crush of people and the fact that it was spreading out due to high liquid content made it overwhelming. I swear the whole baggage claim area was toxic within seconds. And to top it all off, nobody seemed to give a damn about the ITT. Now they have the new terminal and a local flights terminal that handles all those flights, and you don't see crazy stuff anymore. Story 17. When I was young, 10 I think, I was walking to the shop alone. It was fairly dark. I saw one man get chased by another. He stopped at a bus stop, where the chasing man thrust what appeared to be a pole or a bar right through his chest, blood everywhere. The man lay there and no police came. I watched him for a bit, then went to the shops like nothing happened. I am not sure why. Later on, upon returning back the same way I saw 15 minutes later, ambulances there, but I am pretty sure that guy was dead. I suppose I was too young to understand what had transpired. Story 18. I got two within the last few years. Was heading outside after a smoke session with some friends, got out the apartment building and immediately heard gunshots next door. Watched dude flee after shooting two people, stoned out of my mind. And the other time was when I was picking my wife up from her job. She was supposed to have someone relieve her from her position. We heard a loud bang and noticed that a car drove through the laundromat and pinned a little boy against the wall. My wife sat there holding him until paramedics arrived, covered in blood. Both of these happened in the same neighborhood, and the guy that pinned the kid with his car was the dude relieving my wife from her position. Apparently he was on some serious medication.